Studio, we welcome now Professor Stephen Skultety. He's a professor of philosophy, serves as the chair of philosophy and religion at Ole Miss, and also is the director of the Declaration of Independence Center for the Study of American Freedom. Professor, always good to see you, sir.
It's great to see you again, Gerard. It's been too long.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I know you guys are getting ready for the fall session. Tell us what's going to be happening at the Declaration of Independence Center there at Ole Miss.
Well, I'm really excited to tell you about this because sort of over this last year, I've been getting a team of people together, hiring new teachers, hiring an associate director. And beginning in the fall semester, I'm going to have my whole team here at Ole Miss. And so we're going to be expanding the number of opportunities for students in a bunch of different ways. So I'm really excited.
What's been the reception, Professor, from the student community to the center?
Oh, well, the students we've had participating in what we're doing have really loved it. We've kind of been waiting to really get the word out until we had a greater number of students, a greater number of professors ready to teach with us. But now that we've got this team ready to go, we'll be able to expand opportunities.
Well, then, let's be honest. This is a bit of an aberration in the center of a modern American college campus. There doesn't seem to be a lot of interest in studying our founding documents, the foundational principles of the country. And usually when we talk about freedom on a college campus, it always seems to center around abortion. And I think, in fact, the message from the left about ending democracy and all these sorts of fear-mongering seems to always come from and stems from the Supreme Court decision to reverse the Dobbs case. I think that's what is at the heart of it. What are your thoughts about this?
Well, it's always funny that people, when they think about freedom, don't think about things like the ability to participate in the laws and rules that will govern the way we live to one another. I mean, it's just, and the Dobbs decision is a perfect example of this. I mean, as you know, it allowed the decision about abortion to go back to the states and to allow a greater number of people to be involved in this very profound decision about, whether abortion should be legal or not and what the terms of that decision should be. So because of Dobbs, more people are able to be involved in the rules that are governing their lives, which is an old-fashioned way of thinking about what it means to live in a free country, is that you live under laws that you were involved in crafting. So it's Dobbs, rather than being a threat to freedom, is a recovery in many ways of an older way of thinking about freedom. And that's just the kind of thing that students need to know about and are excited to learn about when exposed to them.
Yeah, I've always thought that just putting aside for a moment just the issue of abortion from a moral and ethical perspective, but the idea of the 10th Amendment and federalism and allowing states to make critical decisions when they're not incorporated explicitly in the Constitution, I mean, that is a foundational principle that I think enabled the country to achieve its status as the global superpower that it is.
Absolutely. I mean, this is part of the genius of our founding was the idea that political decision-making is incredibly difficult. Making wise decisions that will pay off 5, 10, 15, 20 years in advance is extremely difficult. In fact, it's so difficult that you want different groups of people being able to make different kinds of decisions and experimenting with different kinds of policy decisions. And so there's this idea that if we just concentrate decision-making enough into the hands of a few very intelligent people, everything will work better and be more efficient. And in fact, the opposite is the case. You need intelligent people across the country trying lots of different things in a constantly changing environment. And that's the genius of federalism. And it's something that I think, again, we need to appreciate the profundity and the wisdom that was built into our founding documents. Yeah,
no doubt about it. And to a great extent, of course, those principles are rooted in the Magna Carta, a document that preceded it by a lot of years. And it just seems like that early on that humans understood this was the best system of government.
Well, I mean, I am a scholar of ancient philosophy, and it's always just amazing to me to be reading something, by Aristotle, who's writing about the nature of politics, back in the 4th century BC. And he's aware of these fundamental dynamics that govern all of kind of the human condition that people learn from and incorporate it into this long tradition of learning we've had throughout the development of Western culture. And it is somewhat terrifying to think that these fundamental lessons that have been with us for millennia are now kind of being forgotten or overlooked in the name of sort of a lot of other kinds of new theories. So as I often tell people, you may think that philosophy doesn't matter, but in the end, these ideas about what is a community, what is justice, what is freedom, these concepts are going to define the decisions you make about how we're going to live with one another. So we need to be studying the history of ideas and the history of Western culture so that we don't lose out on these, important insights.
So one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, because you have the opportunity to interface with young people, with folks that are starting to form opinions and kind of build out their personal profile, their philosophical beliefs and views, is that the concept of freedom. I feel like we don't sell effectively. That often what we get from government, well, I'll give you this and this and this and that, and maybe short term that looks enticing, it looks attractive, but you're to some extent ceding freedom for the long term.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And I think what people don't realize is that even if temporarily you have a lot of additional choices because you're being helped out in a number of ways, your life is far more dependent on people controlling which decisions you're able to make. And so you're trading your ability to make little tiny decisions for being able to have input on larger things and to be able to choose bigger, make bigger and more profound decisions. And so anyway, I agree with you. People are often ready to accept short-term freedom at the sacrifice of long-term freedom, and that won't pay off.
Is this something that you convey to the students, Professor, just to get them to think about this at a minimum?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is so important is that we want students to think critically, and part of that means that you have to give students a bunch of conceptual options. Education never happens by just telling people, here, this is what you have to think. Education is really a matter of saying, hey, look, all of these geniuses through the history of our tradition have thought all of these different things. Now it's up to you to think through each of those options and weigh the pros and cons and look at the arguments in support of all of them. And whenever we do that, and students see how interesting these ideas are, they're always a lot more excited about confronting these old ideas because there's more to them than they thought.
We got a break right now. Can you hang around with us to talk some more?
Absolutely.
Sounds good. We got Professor Stephen Skultety from the University of Mississippi. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio. We're chatting with Professor Stephen Skultety, Chair of Philosophy and Religion at the University of Mississippi. Also serves as the director of the fairly newly minted Declaration of Independence Center for the Study of American Freedom. So I got to ask you this, Professor, and you may choose to refrain from answering, but it's no secret that college campuses, professors in particular, administrations, these seem to be the enclaves of liberalism and leftism. I don't mean classic liberalism. I mean more modern leftist philosophy in this country. But statistics bear that out. There's no secret about that. But you overseeing the Declaration of Independence Center there at Ole Miss seem to be a bit of an anomaly. What do your colleagues, I guess, say, Professor? Do they embrace this as, I guess, incorporating, shall we say, diversity of thought, which is what I think most clear-eyed people think college campuses should embrace?
Well, I think different faculty handle this in different ways. What I tell people is that I'm a conservative. I don't try and hide that from anyone. I don't try to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. And I also am unafraid to say that the Declaration of Independence Center is not value-free. It really does. It's committed to the idea that the American founding was a good thing. Not perfect, but it was a good thing, and that it's important for our students to understand those good things that should be preserved and conserved. And so the point I make to a lot of faculty is that what I'm doing really isn't different from someone that's leading an environmental program. All the professors involved in environmentalism think the environment is a good thing and that it should be preserved. So I don't see why I can't do something similar in thinking that the American founding is a good thing and should be preserved. I'm just adding a new voice, trying to stick up for a new idea that maybe they're not familiar with. Now, there are people, I think, on campus who meet someone like me and can't believe it, and don't like it. But I think most faculty are just kind of surprised to actually meet someone like me or my colleagues, and are curious, and they're just taking a kind of a wait and see attitude toward what I'm trying to do. But my overarching message always is that the Declaration Center is trying to add ideas. We're trying to bring more intellectual diversity. It's not my job to walk around attacking other people. My job is to add new things to this campus, and hopefully in the future, new programs throughout the state of Mississippi at other institutions as well.
Well, I appreciate that response and agree with you. So, just thinking through the polarization in our country today, how can we get? I assume you talk about this with the students, but how do we get back to a point where we can engage in civil discourse? I think it's a good thing, honestly. I think there's benefit and value to you made the point that they look at you and can't believe you, for example. Well, I think a lot on our side see folks on the left and feel the same way. How do we get back to the point where we do engage in this intellectual curiosity to try to understand why do they feel this way? What makes them tick? What's their rationale for I guess having such a philosophy? How do we get back to that? I think we would all benefit from it.
I agree completely. I think part of it is that we need leaders in higher education who see that the protest culture that has been around now for 60, 70 years, maybe had a point at its time, maybe served a purpose at its time, but that purpose is no longer helpful. I just think that the protest culture of the 60s is not serving any of us well anymore, especially on campus colleges. So when you have these sort of demonstrations taking place on campuses where, one group shows up with placards and is protesting, and then we have other people show up to counter-protest the protesters, and then everyone is standing there screaming at each other and looking to put things on social media. I don't see that as an exchange of views. I don't see that as a good and fruitful discussion. And I think people who suggest that protest and counter-protest is a form of dialogue, they're just mistaken. That's not dialogue. That is just people shouting at one another. So I think universities in particular have to make a commitment to hosting debates, to hosting dialogues, and not just among different versions of people who basically agree with one another. They have to sponsor events where people with profoundly different views are in dialogue with one another. And I just don't think universities have committed themselves to producing those kind of events in the way they should. And so let me give you an example. How many universities have had events where the pro-Palestinian intellectual is in debate with the pro-Israel intellectual, and that event is sponsored by the university? We're just not doing that. We're just we're stepping back and just letting protests and counter-protests and screaming matches take place. And I don't think it serves students well, and I ultimately don't think it'll serve our culture well if we don't embrace a culture of conversation, which requires actually producing events featuring conversation rather than just assuming that protests are the only way to do this.
It's such a great point, Professor, and to a great extent, it feels like there's countless reports, this, of professors, rather than serving as the facilitators of such debate and exchange, they're participating in it. They're encouraging it. They're engaging in it. In some cases, this has happened even on colleges in our state, including the one you sit at. There's certain students who were graded based on, there's bias that is applied. I mean, that's just happening. It's not widespread, I don't feel like, in the state of Mississippi, but it is on other college campuses. We got to get the academic community to step back and be more, again, the facilitators and perhaps the moderators. Your idea about having a civil debate among intellectuals who have differing philosophies, it doesn't matter what the issue is that we seem to disagree about. I love it. How can we get that done? By the way, I want to sign up to be one of the debaters. I'd love to do that on economic philosophy, just economic policy.
Oh, absolutely. And actually, that's a great example, because even among conservative intellectuals right now, as I'm sure you know, there's actually fascinating debates going on about the overall purposes and the actual practices of different capitalisms, different kinds of capitalisms.
Absolutely.
And as conservatives wanting to conserve capitalism because we believe that it's the best economic order, we should be welcoming those debates. We should be showing our conservative students how interesting conservative thinkers are disagreeing about these issues. I think that would serve conservatives well. And then at university campuses, we should have these debates between left and right and show students how this is done. And so now that I've got a team of people at the Declaration Center, I'm going to be trying to foster more of these kind of debates here at Ole Miss. But like I said, I'm also going to be reaching out to other universities and institutions to bring about these kind of things around the state, because it's just crucial. If we're going to change the tide, we have to show people how to do this.
That's awesome. Well, before we go here, it seems like that if the goal in a college experience is to promote critical thinking, you can't do that if you only get one side of an issue. That doesn't. Right. You're not really generating the desired end result there. Professor, always good to talk to you, sir, and I look forward to talking to you some more. This has been really good. Appreciate you coming on. Thanks.
Let's do it again soon. Thanks, Gerard. I appreciate it.
You got it. We're coming right back, folks, in the Element Wealth studio. Please stay with us.